I'm really happy to be here. My family could not be here today, but I have a photo of them to show you. Let's see here. So that's my husband, Bob, my daughter, Natalie, and my son, Sam. Natalie is a sophomore at Azusa Pacific University. She was born with a smile on her face and a little extra dose of sparkle, for sure. She's going to school about a 30-minute drive from Disneyland, so her aunt has spoiled her with a Disneyland pass. And we're not really sure if she's getting an education or if she's just on a really well-funded vacation. So that's Natalie. So Laura mentioned my husband, Bob, is the deputy chief of police for Portland, Oregon. We have a tendency to make the news for our protests, so we're super proud about that. So it's kind of a stressful job, right? You would think for someone who has a really highly stressful job, they would choose a hobby that was a little bit more relaxing, like fly fishing or golf or something like that. My husband has chosen to be a football official. So he spends his falls officiating football in the Pac-12 conference. And he's a head linesman. He's a redhead with an H on his back, and he's the one that talks to the coaches. So I thought I'd include some photos of Bob with coaches. So here he is getting yelled at by Mark Helfrich, former coach of the Oregon Ducks. Here he's getting yelled at by Mike Leach. He's getting yelled at by Coach Sonny Dykes. So I'm not drawn to conflict, so I really don't know how we ended up together, but apparently that's what he likes to do. And this is my Sam, and he's the reason I'm here today. Before I talk about Sam, I want to say that it's really an honor for me to be here, and I'm especially thankful to Laura, because as I understand it, I am the first speaker you have had who does not have a survivor story. My story is a hard one, and it's not worth celebrating. And I'm also grateful to be with you because I get to thank you publicly for fighting for my kid, because I know you have. And I had dreamed for many years to come here and celebrate with you Sam's victory over cancer, and that didn't happen. But by the end of my talk today, I hope that you leave here knowing that you are making a difference. Absolutely, wholeheartedly, for sure. And I'm so grateful about that. So about my son, I'd first like to show you this video so you can see a boy who had endured so much and still maintained a pretty incredible spirit.
I am William Wallace.
No, William Wallace is 7 feet tall.
So I've heard. If he were here, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and lightning bolts from his arse. I am William Wallace, and I see a whole army of my countrymen standing in defiance of tyranny. What would you do without freedom? Would you fight?
No, we will run and we will live.
Aye, fight and you may die. Run and you'll live, at least a while. But dying in your beds, many years from now, would you be willing to give all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom? Ching, and then I chop everybody's head.
Yes. Yes, he did say, and then they chop everybody's heads off. Sam was 9 years old when he was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, with a tumor in his left fibula, just below the knee. And you know the story. It was intensive chemotherapy, amputation, multiple surgeries, then a relapse, more surgery, clinical trials, and always the hope that we would keep him around long enough to access those drugs that were so promising for Ewing sarcoma. Sam fought for a total of 6 years, and we lost him on August 27th of 2016. So it's been a little bit over 2 years. It was 1 week before his freshman year in high school. Before Sam had cancer, he was constantly coming up with big dreams. He had big dreams and strong negotiation skills, which made him kind of hard to parent sometimes. But he was a daydreamer, but it wasn't like your typical daydream where kids sort of tune the teacher out in elementary school and they stare out the windows and they start daydreaming. Sam actually chose daydreaming as an intentional leisure activity, and he had a name for it. He said he was going deep in thought. So he would tell us he was going deep in thought because he didn't want to be disturbed. So it was not uncommon to hear him yell from his bedroom, "Hey, you guys, I'm going to go deep in thought, so don't disturb me." So, Natalie, what's your brother doing? He's deep in thought. He doesn't want to be disturbed. And it wasn't uncommon for him to come out of these deep in thought episodes with big ideas that he would propose to me. Things like, "Hey, Mom, can we build a giant catapult in the backyard? Hey, Mom, can we have a car wash but just use super soakers and squirt guns? Mom, how old do you have to be to run for mayor?" The last time I remember him going deep in thought, he was writing things down on a notepad, and he was a little bit older, so he wasn't calling it deep in thought anymore, but I asked him what he was doing, and he said, "Well, don't laugh, but I'm trying to create a new global economy." So, big ideas. He was in this deep in thought phase of life when he was first diagnosed with cancer. That's him at 9. And he was diagnosed, what was I saying? He was in this deep in thought phase when he was first diagnosed with cancer. And it was just a few days after running up to the hospital and meeting with doctors and hearing strange words we didn't understand and getting poked all the time. He hadn't even started chemotherapy, and something changed. And I remember him sitting in the entryway with his backpack on. We were getting ready to go to the hospital, and he had a sad look on his face, and I said, "You doing okay?" And he stood up, and he started to cry, and he said, "Mom, you know what the worst thing about all this cancer stuff is?" He said, "Ever since it started, I haven't been able to go deep in thought." And that was such a profound moment for me because I realized that we had 2 battles on our hands. We had the battle against the cancer, and we had to fight to save his spirit. Because cancer does a number on a kid's spirit. It impacts their identity, their level of anxiety, their relationships, their ability to laugh, to learn, to eat, to sleep, and it impacts their ability to dream. I think the one question that makes a difference in a young person's ability to dream is, do I have permission to be hopeful? Do I have permission to be hopeful? Hope tends to be a pretty overused word. How many times have we seen a poster with a kid's face with cancer and the word hope next to it? It's used so much that it seems to lose its power, but there really are no other words that I can find to replace it. So for the person who hopefully many of you for the person whose life is going reasonably well, hope comes out in things like, gosh, I hope traffic isn't bad today. Or I hope the boss is in a good mood today. Or maybe you are the boss and you're hoping that people will just follow through with what they're supposed to do at work today, right? Some of you really hope TCU beats UT again this weekend. And some of you may have thought, I hope they have a reasonably entertaining speaker for the Hearts of Gold luncheon. But for a parent or a young person dealing with a cancer diagnosis, hope is anchored in the question, will I be okay? And it's a tricky thing, this kind of hope. I remember when Sam relapsed and we knew things were bad, I remember having this little internal conversation with myself about whether or not I should be hopeful. Because the world says, don't get your hopes up, right? You don't want to get your hopes up because you don't want to be disappointed if things go bad. And I remember thinking to myself, what if I actually chose to be hopeful? Would it hurt even more if I lose my son because I chose to be hopeful? Because what I know for sure is that every day we live with hope is 100 times more tolerable than a day without hope. So our family chose to be hopeful intentionally. I'm not talking about a naive hope here either. That would be false hope. And doctors want to make sure we don't have false hope. But Dr. Jerome Groopman wrote a book entitled The Anatomy of Hope, and he says in it, he distinguishes the difference between true hope and false hope, and he says false hope does not recognize the risks and dangers that true hope does. False hope can lead to intemperate choices and flawed decision-making. True hope takes into account the real threats that exist and seeks to navigate the best paths around them. Our hope was not false hope. We knew what we were dealing with, but we chose to hope because the thought of losing Sam was intolerable. And the reason we could do that is because the very exciting research that was being done for Ewing sarcoma. We knew it was right around the corner. We knew there was a chance we could access it. I met Laura Rutledge because I called her, and I called her because I needed hope. I had read on our Ewing sarcoma email group how Carly's scans were clear after being on a new clinical trial. So I reached out to her to hear more about it and to find out how I could help with fundraising. And fundraising was totally foreign to me. I felt I had no credibility, I had no knowledge of how to do it. But when I called Laura, I learned that she not only had a wealth of information for me to join the research funding fight, but she also gave me a reason to be hopeful because these better treatments were coming. So when I think about describing Laura, I first wanted to say she's fearless. She's not afraid of cancer. I mean, if you know Laura well, she's kind of a feisty little thing, right? Right, John? So I thought about saying Laura is not afraid, but I would be wrong. I think Laura is terrified of cancer. She knows the darkness, she knows the pain, she knows the anxiety, and she knows how it impacts the spirit of young people with big dreams. And I'm so conflicted when I see the media say that we're fearless against cancer, because fear is the reason we fight. Fear is part of our physiology. It's our autonomic nervous system response to a threat to our lives, and it prompts us to either fight or to run so that we may live. Without fear, there would be so much more death because we wouldn't have the urge to fight. Laura knows the threat that is cancer, and she's terrified. But the bravest people don't try to avoid the fear, they respond to it by putting up a fight. And that's what I needed when I was fighting for Sam. I needed someone who could understand my terror and join me in the fight. So as you can imagine, we had a lot of bad news over 6 years. When I got bad news, I would call Laura, usually crying, and the first thing she would say is, no, 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 no. And she'd say, let's think about this, let's think about this. Who can we call? Have you called Pete Anderson? Was really the first thing she would say. We'd furiously create a list of options and doctors to call and drugs to try, all the while knowing that maybe, just maybe, we could keep Sam around long enough to access something better. We couldn't find enough effective treatments, but we always found hope. And if there's one thing I want you to walk away with after this talk, it's that cancer research gives people hope. And this foundation contributed to my family's ability to have hope. Because of the research you have been funding, young people have hope, and already more young people with cancer have the opportunity to dream and to survive and to live well. So as Laura said, our community in Oregon has done some of our own fundraising for this foundation, and we did it while Sam was still fighting. And then we lost him. And I didn't want anything to do with cancer for a while because it had caused us so much pain. So I thought I was done with all this. But here's the thing, is love needs to be expressed somehow. And when you love a child, you find hundreds of ways to express that love. We love our kids by caring for their basic needs. By reading to them, helping them with their homework, by giving them memorable experiences and protecting them from harm, right? That's how we love our kids. And when a child is sick, love is expressed in how we find the best treatment. We rush them to the hospital with any sign of infection. We learn a new medical language. We challenge the doctors, and we make sure the nurses stay on their toes. And we do everything we can to put a smile on their face when they need it most. So when I lost Sam, my crazy love for him didn't go away. But Sam was no longer here for me to express my love for him. So love expresses itself in sadness. That's all it can do. It didn't take long for me to realize that there are some ways that I can continue loving Sam. And for me, it's continuing to fight this terrible disease that he knew needed more attention from the world. So in April of 2018, we officially launched the Sam Day Foundation. to fund research for rare, hard-to-treat pediatric cancers. So today I have 2 kids. I am the mother of Natalie and Sam. And with Natalie, I love her, I invest in her future, and with Sam, I'm investing in his legacy. That's how I love my kids. And if you have any question, I want to make it absolutely clear that the Sam Day Foundation and the Rutledge Cancer Foundation are not competitors, we are partners, and we are not divided, we are multiplied. We understand fear, we understand hope, and we understand that we still have a lot of work to do. You all used to be fighting for my family, and now you're fighting with my family. We have to be smart, we have to be strong, and we have to be plenty. So don't let hope be a meaningless word for you. Families need permission to be hopeful, and they need to keep dreaming big. This was taken just 6 weeks before we lost Sam. And you can see from the look on his face that we won the battle to keep his spirit alive. But we have to keep pushing for better treatments so kids like Sam can continue to be the gift they were meant to be to this world.